Hi folks, Marc, Frederic, Le Charcuterie Anglais. My apologies. Start again. Marc, Frederic, Le Charcuterie Anglais. I'm going to talk about the Shetland cattle today, and this is aimed at people who are getting into small holding or crofting, particularly crofters. But if you're getting into crofting, you've probably already done your research and know a Shetland cow is a good choice to choose, particularly if you're crofting up on the Isles like Orkney or Shetland itself. So, but the Shetland is a good choice to have if you're a smallholder producer, you know, down in other areas in the lowlands of Scotland or even throughout England and Wales. And you only really need one if you want it as a house cow. You don't hear that terminology much these days, having a house cow. But the Shetland is probably, in UK cattle terms, probably the number one choice as a house cow. There are other choices, which I'll come to in future videos, but Shetland tends to be a number one choice as a house cow. Having said that, you don't really want to be keeping just one cow, okay? They need company. So always try to have at least two. So if you're a very small producer, smallholder, crofter, then, you know, try and go for at least two. Or a cow and calf at foot, you know, with a calf at foot. So, and as she's bringing on the calf, she's got company that way. They're relatively docile, and you know, they were a bit wild once upon a time, but over the years and as they've been used and domesticated, they've become relatively docile. But with all cattle, you've got to be a little bit careful when they've got a newborn. Okay, so always be on the guard at the time where they have a newborn, because they can be protective just like any other form of cattle. So what makes them so special? Well, predominantly it's because they're dual purpose and they're small. They're one of the smallest of our UK cattle breeds, and the body weights range from like 350 kilo upwards. They're predominantly black and white. They look like a mini Friesian. And Friesians are not British, by the way. They come out from northern Holland and Germany, in that area there. From I think it's from Friesland, but I'd have to double check that. So that's where Friesians come from, north of Holland, north of Germany. You know, particularly around that border area. So and they look like a mini Friesian in some ways because of their size, which kind of puts them at like stone wall level, or just beneath stone wall level in height, which is ideal when those sharp winds are coming across the Scottish Isles and things. You know, they can get some protection. Bigger cows, you know, would always suffer more, and they wouldn't have the right kind of coating. They're very, very hardy. They do need some form of cover when the weather is at its harshest, albeit they'll live through it, but you don't want to be stressing animals out in any way. So, you know, try and find a suitable shelter place where it can have access, where it can come in and out at its own choosing is best. But if you need to keep it indoors through the extreme weathers, then Shetlands will cope with that quite well. They're not they don't really get stressed about it. You know, particularly if you're, you know, handling them on a daily basis. Sorry. So choosing a Shetland is a good choice. So no matter where you are throughout UK. And the other thing that Shetlands do, they convert poor grazing areas very well. so which makes them an ideal choice for conservation grazing. So if you want to encourage wildlife and things like that on your land, again, it's a good choice. So so there we are. You know, they'll give you milk, and of course, if they give you milk, they'll be giving you lots of cream, which you can make your butter, you can make your cheese. So you've got all that, and that's why they became a good house cow. And then when you're ready and the time comes, you want them for meat, they're a great choice. And portion size, because they're small, brilliant, fantastic portion size. If you was to have like a 10-inch dinner plate, and you've got, like, say for example, a blonde Aquitaine from France, and if you've got a rump steak, it'll hang over about 6 inches either side of your 10-inch dinner plate. Well, that's no good to anybody, all right? That's just gluttony. But you have the same steak from a Shetland on a 10-inch plate. It'll fit on the plate, you know. So they're great to give you, you know, the right portion size, okay? And of course, because they can give you the right portion size, you can have the optimum thickness, all right? And you can still afford it. Of course, the costs are the same for processing them at abattoir and everything. You know, small cows, big cows, all the charges are the same. So, you know, you lose out. And just talking about slaughtering, by the way, don't automatically think you have the right to have the hide back. So if you're into processing your hides to make leather or other things, then don't think it belongs to you. And what I mean by that is, you'll find in the small print of your contract, whether it's an actual contract or it's part of the verbal contract at abattoirs, the killing price is actually set where the abattoir keeps the hide, right? So if you want to keep the hide, you're going to have to either buy it back, or you're paying more of the killing charge because the abattoir are not holding your hide. Because all the abattoirs, they salt and stack up their hides, and then eventually when they get a pallet full, they send them off to a tannery and things like that. So there we are. So I'm just saying that because we're talking about a house cow, and I don't want you to think every part of your cow belongs to you. In kind of theory it does, but just bear that point in mind, right? When it's time for going to the abattoir, the hide doesn't belong to you unless you make special arrangement, all right? It's a bit of an odd one. I've said it out loud, and just remember that, all right? So you're not going to be too disappointed if you have the knowledge beforehand. If you're forewarned, then things are going to run a lot more smoothly, aren't they? But anyway, let's get back to the Shetland house cow. Small users, all right? Just make sure you got more than one, and to keep them mentally in order. All right, we don't like being on our own, do we? Well, sometimes we do, but we do like company, and it's the same for cows. So yeah, have a think about the Shetland, research them, go off and see some, talk to people who own them. There's a Shetland Cattle Society. They've got lots of good information. The meat is great. I mean, I've actually been up to the Shetlands years ago, and it was after the Brer oil disaster, and I went as a volunteer to help out at a wildlife sanctuary at Hillswick, and I remember seeing one or two Shetlands on the way. My time there wasn't to look at Shetland cattle, but I did get to see some. There's not many there. There's more outside of Shetland than there is on the island itself. And but no, I regret not having spent some time with Shetland owners and looking at them a bit more carefully. Like I said, I was there as a volunteer to Wildlife Centre, and looking after seals that got caught up in all that oil and everything. And also I looked after some wild birds. Totally digressing. I'll just quickly tell you this story. It's got nothing to do with Shetland cattle. But whilst I was there, the wildlife centre got a phone call from the British Army, because there's one or two quiet bases based up there, you know, and they ran over an otter with their Land Rover, 3/4 ton Land Rover, and at the time it was still alive, and they wanted to bring it to the wildlife centre to be cared for. So these guys were like island hopping all the way to get down to where we were at Hillswick. But by the time they got there, the otter was dead. It was gone. So this thing had been put in a freezer and been frozen, and because of my butchery skills, I was asked to skin it. Bloody hell! toughest animal I've ever skinned in my life. The skin was so tight up against the the flesh of the animal. It was unbelievable. And trying to get the skin over the webbed feet and down the tail. I mean, I know a few tricks how to sort foxtails out, but with an otter tail it was a bit different. So I went through all that experience as well. So I don't know why I'm telling you that story. It just came up, Shetlands, talking about Shetland cattle. So anyway, let's hope it's a choice for you. Give them a try and see what you think. The meat's excellent, by the way. I have to confess, the meat's brilliant. I've not had much of it, but what I have had has been very, very good. No wonder it was a dual purpose, breed. So anyway, that's enough on that, and I'll be moving on to another Scottish breed in the next day or two. So look out for that video, and until I get all through them and move further south over the border. So until then, toodaloo.